This project started with an email I sent to a musician on Bandcamp. My initial intention was to do a documentary on a collective of anarchists and musicians based in Tucson. Unfortunately for me, I was a bit too late. The collective had disbanded and moved on to new things. However, I still wanted to try, so I contacted the drummer, Luke, who had moved to Philadelphia. He emailed me back saying that he was willing to talk to me about the collective specifically and Anarchy in general. So I made a plan to drive out to Philadelphia a couple months later. In the meantime, I began to conduct research. Regarding the term anarchy itself, I was familiar with its use as synonymous with chaos and disorder, as well as its use as the name of an anti-hierarchical philosophy of self-governance. With these two contrasting uses in mind, I decided to do some research on contemporary anarchy in Philadelphia. One of the first sites I found was called Anarchist Links, and it was hosted by an organization called Red Philly. The site provided an excellent entry point for understanding the contemporary anarchist atmosphere in Philadelphia. It provided links to anarchist spaces, mostly library and bookstore based, as well as union organizations, prison support organizations, community kitchens, and housing resources. Also through my Google search, I found an article at Reason.com discussing gender anarchy regarding transgendered people in public buses. Dr. Heathfog Davis, a political science professor at Temple University, was interviewed in the article, and he agreed to speak with me about it during my trip. Finally, I found a book called Ethics, Politics, and Anarcho-Punk Identifications, Punk and Anarchy in Philadelphia, by Dr. Edward Anthony Avery Natel. I contacted Dr. Avery Natel, and he was willing to speak with me as well. I had a decent lineup of interviews ready, and some spaces to check out, so I was ready to hit the road. While in Philadelphia, I conducted all of my scheduled interviews and had the opportunity to conduct a few more. One was with an anarchist organizer who was at the time raising support and awareness for detained J20 protesters who were facing decades in prison. The other was with an anarchist activist and musician who had done some prison time himself. A few months after this trip, I had the opportunity to make a trip to Tucson, where I met Fred Woodworth. Mr. Woodworth is credited with publishing the longest-running self-printed zine in the United States, an anarchist zine called The Match. In the most recent edition that was published before I arrived in Tucson, Mr. Woodworth had written a long letter from the editor discussing why he was dropping the term anarchy from his publication, which was received by his readers as a very controversial move. Eager to talk to him about this decision and the shifting definitions of the word anarchy, I wrote him a letter, and he agreed to meet with me. Throughout these interviews and experiences, I learned that the word anarchy does not have a settled definition, but requires complication and nuance in order to be understood. By opening this term to discussion through a choragraphy performed by the people who claim it as an identity, a field of study, and/or a weapon, I hope to better understand the term and its uses in our contemporary moment.